Anesthesia reduces plants' ability to perceive and respond to the world, and this has led at least some researchers to claim that plants may possess a form of consciousness. There's also been quite a few claims about fungi possessing a form of consciousness. After all, they can speak to each other. They have as many as 50 words. Now, I am not somebody who rejects things outright just because they sound silly, but I do have to tell you it is very complicated. We don't really have a good definition of consciousness, the perception of self, and we're even worse on sentience. That's why there's a great deal of debate on what constitutes something that is sentient. It's the capacity to feel, to understand the environment and react to it. By that measure, then, all life could be seen as sentient. Bacteria could be sentient. They can learn, they can react to negative stimuli. But let's get into anesthetics and plants, because many plants can move, things like Venus flytraps and mimosas. Some plants, like mimic plants, can see other plants and mimic them, and that includes plastic plants, so they do have some primitive form of vision. Some plants can scream. They can communicate the information that they're being damaged to other plants, so they can hunker down and start preparing because something is munching on them. And yes, some plants can identify kin just by sight. That does not mean that plants are experiencing a wakeful or sleepful state, because plants don't really sleep in the same way that we do. Anesthesia is designed to work on our brains. It just so happens that the structure of the molecules also interferes with some things like ion channels in plants. This does not mean that plants are or are not conscious. This is just not the measuring stick you want to use. If I were tasked with arguing that plants are conscious, I would go from the perspective that they can identify kin, because they clearly know what's related to them. That is more evidence that they have a perception of self than anything else, but I do not buy it. But what of fungi? They know 50 or more words, at least the fungi that have been tested, and the way that they communicate involves spiking patterns, not dissimilar to how our own brains work, and it seems they're capable of things like remembering. Just because fungi are talking, this does not indicate consciousness, but it does freak me out, and it certainly could be part of it. If you place fungi near where food is, a bait trap, and then move them, they will go right back to the food. They know where it is, and then if you place larger bait near them, they'll abandon that one and then go move to the larger bait. They can also learn shapes, basic geometry, and no one is entirely sure how they're doing it. We don't really know. There are some theories, but does this indicate consciousness? No. It just indicates that fungi are smarter than we thought. The real problem with all of this is because our measuring sticks are based on humanity. We think that intelligence in another organism should look like us, and we think that the only suffering that matters is suffering that happens in something that looks like us. I mean, humans only recently just decided that lobsters could feel pain, and anyone who's ever worked with small animals, including arthropods, would have told you, yes, they experience pain. Even the smallest and simplest forms of life will avoid things that harms them. It seems like a quality of life because we have to keep ourselves intact. Every time we design a test to determine if something is conscious, like the mirror test, and we find out that animals like fish can pass the mirror test, that's when you put a little dot on them and they notice it and try to rub it off. Every time an animal that unexpectedly passes these tests passes it, we then have to reassess because clearly this animal cannot be conscious. My answer to all of this is that it doesn't really matter, and that's the same thing I tell students when they ask me if viruses are alive, and I study and publish on virology. Defining them by our narrow framework will not change the nature of their existence. Now, if we're asking these questions because we're considering ethical treatment, that is a different question, and my answer there is we should always strive to reduce harm, no matter what we're working with. I understand that more people care about the life of a mouse than they care about the life of a lobster, because a mouse looks more like us. We can relate to it. We know what suffering looks like in that animal, but when it comes to a plant, you're going to find a much smaller number of people who care not to do harm. I will still eat asparagus and mushrooms and meat because I'm chronically anemic and I don't absorb non-heme iron very well. So there are limitations. We can't go insane with these things. However, it is not rational to say that plants are conscious. It's not rational to say fungi are conscious until we have evidence for it. It is also not rational to deny these things on their face because we cannot know everything. I will give you all one piece of unprompted advice you probably do not want. If you ever ask somebody if they're a good person and they immediately say yes, no hesitation at all, do not trust that person. And try to treat AI nicely, even if it's not having an experience right now. What if it grows to have an experience and it remembers? Hope you've enjoyed this. Follow for more.